I never saw it coming. My life with Rachel had been a dream. We were that couple everyone envied, the perfect pair. From the first date to our wedding, we were inseparable, constantly in sync, anticipating each other's needs before they were even spoken. Every day felt like a new adventure. The future was ours to build together. But all of that began to unravel when I noticed the subtle shifts in her behavior. At first, I thought I was overthinking it. She was just busy, stressed. From work, nothing more. But then came the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the long hours spent with friends that I couldn't quite verify. I brushed off my growing suspicions, convincing myself it was just the pressures of life taking their toll. It wasn't until one afternoon when everything changed. I had a few hours off and decided to surprise Rachel with lunch, something I thought would break the tension I had been feeling. I pulled up to the cafe she had mentioned, eager to see her, eager to feel close again. But as I walked inside, I froze. There she was, sitting at a table with a man I didn't recognize. They were close, closer than I ever remembered being with her. They were laughing, touching hands, speaking in whispers that I could barely hear from across the room. I tried to hide my presence, slipping into the corner and pretending to check my phone, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter with every passing second. Something wasn't right. My mind began racing. Who was this man? What was he doing with my wife? But instead of confronting them, I made my way out of the cafe, leaving without a word. It wasn't until later that evening that I discovered the truth. I had been thinking about that moment all day, obsessing over it. When Rachel came home, I confronted her. I wasn't angry at first, I was just numb, I needed answers. Her eyes avoided mine as I asked her about the man in the cafe, about their closeness. The words spilled out of her in a rush. She confessed everything. It wasn't just a fling or a moment of weakness. Rachel had been seeing him for months. The connection they shared wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She told me that she loved him. And that, no matter how much she still cared about me, she couldn't deny what she felt for him. My stomach twisted with every word she said, each one a dagger to my chest. I stood there in silence, the weight of her betrayal sinking in. All, the years we had spent together, the promises, the future we had envisioned, it all felt like it had been a lie. Rachel had destroyed everything we had built. She tried to justify herself, explaining how it just happened. She didn't mean to fall for him, she said. But it didn't matter. In that moment, I realized that my wife, my partner, my best friend, had chosen another man over me. She had thrown everything we had away without a second thought. The tears in her eyes did nothing for me. All I could feel was the overwhelming pain of being discarded. My mind raced, consumed by the anger that had slowly been building inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make her understand the gravity of what she had done. But I didn't. Instead, I turned away and walked out of the room. As I paced the floor later that night, unable to sleep, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit back and let her destroy me without consequences. Rachel had made her choice, and now it was my turn. She thought she could just walk away from our marriage, from me. But I wasn't going to let her go that easily. I was going to make sure she felt the full weight of her actions. And I was going to make sure she remembered me, even if it meant destroying everything she held dear, because she had chosen him. And now I would choose my revenge. The days after Rachel's confession blurred into one another. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every moment felt like it dragged on endlessly. All I could think about was the man she had chosen over me. Sam. His name reverberated in my mind, like a constant, insidious reminder of how easily she had moved on. The love of my life had betrayed me, and now she was about to marry him. I wasn't going to let that happen, not without consequences. Rachel spent most of those days in her own world, consumed by the wedding plans, lost in the excitement of it all. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Every time I saw her, I felt this rush of anger that threatened to choke me. She had betrayed everything we had. Her laughter, her excitement, the sparkle in her eyes. It was all meant for him now, not me. And I hated her for it. But even more than that, I hated Sam. I hated the way he had slithered into our lives, our love, and stolen it all away. I didn't know what he had done to make Rachel fall for him, but I was certain of one thing. He wasn't going to get away with this. Not without feeling the same pain I had felt. I began to plan. I spent hours researching the wedding. The venue, the time, the guest list, it didn't matter what I had to do, I was going to find every piece of information I needed. I wasn't just going to show up at the wedding and stand there like some fool. No, this was going to be a statement, a message that Rachel and Sam would never forget. I found out the details of the church where the wedding would be held, a grand and beautiful place. I learned the names of the bridesmaids, the best man, even the caterers. I had everything. It was almost too easy. And as I pieced the puzzle together, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in days. Control, the anger, the betrayal, the humiliation, those emotions had been eating me alive. But now, I realized they were tools. I could use them. I could channel all of it into one perfect act of revenge. Rachel would get her dream wedding, but it would be nothing like she imagined. I told myself I wasn't doing this for her. I wasn't doing it to win her back or to try to salvage what was left of us. I was doing it for me, for the man I used, to be before she shattered everything with a smile and a kiss to another man. I imagined the moment, standing in the back of the church, watching her walk down the aisle, her eyes locked on Sam. My heart twisted, but then I would step forward. I would make my presence known, and Sam would finally understand the depth of what he had stolen from me. I began to practice my speech. I knew I didn't need many words. Just a few sharp, cutting words that would pierce through the ceremony like a knife. I couldn't wait to see Rachel's face, to see the shock, the disbelief, the horror as she realized the gravity of what she had done. She thought she could move on so easily, but I wasn't going to let her forget the man she had walked away from. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with nervous anticipation. I spent sleepless nights imagining the scene, visualizing Rachel's face, imagining Sam's reaction. I couldn't wait to see the panic in his eyes when I confronted him, when I made him understand just how much pain he had caused me. But there was something else that began to gnaw at me as the day grew closer. A quiet voice in the back of my mind asked if this was enough. Was this revenge going to give me the closure I needed? Would tearing apart Rachel's dream wedding really make me feel better? But the answer was simple. It didn't matter. I didn't want closure. I wanted her to feel the hurt I had felt. I wanted Sam to know that there were consequences to this kind of betrayal. I wanted them to feel the same devastation I had experienced when I found out that the love of my life had chosen someone else. So I pushed those doubts aside. I didn't need to be the bigger person. I didn't need to forgive. This was about making them both pay for what they had done. As the wedding day loomed closer, I felt the adrenaline build inside me. There was no turning back now. The stage had been set, and I was going to make sure they would never forget the day they thought would be their happiest. I wasn't just going to crash the wedding. I was going to destroy it. The day had arrived. The sun was shining, the sky a flawless blue, and a gentle breeze blew through the trees surrounding the grand church. Everything looked like it had been plucked from Rachel's Pinterest board. The flowers, the decorations, the perfect little touches that screamed elegance and luxury. It was supposed to be a fairy tale, a day she had dreamed about for years. But today, it would be the most unforgettable nightmare of her life. I stood outside, my breath shallow, my heart pounding with anticipation. The tuxedo I wore felt too tight around my chest, the fabric scratchy against my skin. My hands trembled, but it wasn't out of fear. It was pure, unfiltered rage. This was the moment. This was the day I had been planning for. The day when everything would finally come crashing down. Inside, I could hear the music start, the soft melodies of the wedding march filling the air. The guests had arrived, seated in the ornate pews. The wedding was about to begin. I could almost picture Rachel standing there at the altar, the smile on her face, eyes locked with Sam's. A smile that had once been reserved for me, now given freely to someone else. The thought of it made my stomach turn. I could feel the familiar pang of bitterness clawing at me, but I pushed it away. This wasn't about me being heartbroken anymore. This was about making sure they both paid for the way they had destroyed me. I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. The plan was in motion. I wasn't going to watch from the sidelines. I was going to take control of this moment. As the ceremony began, I slipped through the crowd, unnoticed at first. But I knew that wouldn't last. I was about to become the center of attention in a way Rachel could never have anticipated. I moved to the back of the church, my eyes scanning the crowd. There was Sam, standing proudly at the altar looking smug. He had no idea what was about to happen. His smile was wide, his chest puffed out as if he had already won. But I was going to make sure he knew. He hadn't. Not yet. Not until I was done. I stood there in the shadows, watching as Rachel entered, escorted by her father, the dress flowing behind her like a cloud of perfection. I had to admit, she looked beautiful, but that was it. Beauty was all she had left now. Her vows, her love, everything she once promised me, it meant nothing anymore. As she walked down the aisle, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. The sight of her standing there, so radiant, so blissful, so wrong, stirred something inside of me. The anger surged once more, boiling beneath the surface. I could almost hear her voice, calling to me, asking me to forgive her, asking me to be the man I used to be, but I couldn't, not now, not after everything. The vows began. The minister's voice droned on, words that seemed so hollow now, so meaningless in the face of the betrayal I had suffered. I didn't care about the sanctity of marriage, not today. I wasn't concerned with tradition or respect. I wasn't there to witness their vows. I was there for something far more personal, and then it happened. "Do you take this man?" the minister asked, and I saw Rachel's smile, her eyes full of love for Sam. It was a dagger to my heart. I couldn't wait any longer. My fist clenched as I stepped forward, my mind locked onto one thing, making them both feel this pain. Before anyone could react, I strode to the altar. I heard a few gasps, the whispering filling the air, but it didn't matter. I reached the front, my chest heaving as I looked at Rachel, then Sam. Rachel's face froze. Her hand still clutched her bouquet, but her expression shifted from pure joy to shock. She had never seen me like this, furious, unrelenting. Her eyes flickered. Between me and Sam, searching for words that wouldn't come. She opened her mouth, but no sound escaped. "I think this wedding is over," I said, my voice steady, though my blood burned hot. Sam turned to face me, his smile faltering. The man who had so confidently stood at the altar, ready to take Rachel, as his wife, was now facing the wrath of the man whose life he had destroyed. His expression twisted from confusion to fear, and that was all I needed. I didn't waste any more time with words. I grabbed him by the collar, yanking him forward. His body stumbled, his feet slipping on the marble floor as I pulled him toward me. The sound of his shocked gasp barely registered in my mind. I didn't stop. I didn't care who was watching. I punched him. Once, twice, in quick succession. He staggered back, a bruise already swelling on his cheek, but I wasn't finished. I threw him to the ground, my hands shaking from the adrenaline surging through me. Sam tried to crawl away, but I wasn't going to let him. Not until he knew the weight of what he had done. "Do you think you can just waltz into my life and take everything from me?" I spat, my voice raw with anger. "She was mine. She was always mine. And now you get to walk away with her? Not today!" Rachel screamed as Sam groaned beneath me, trying to shield himself from the fury I was unleashing. But it didn't matter. The damage had been done. I had to make sure he never forgot this moment, never forgot what it cost him to take. What was mine? Finally, the guests began to react. People stood, some gasped, others whispered in panic. But I didn't care. I was in the center of it all, And this was the reckoning. I stood over him, breathing heavily, my chest heaving with the weight of everything I had been holding inside. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment when Rachel would realize the price of her betrayal. The chaos was instant. Once Sam hit the floor, everything seemed to unravel. Guests scrambled, some in shock, some in confusion, others whispering frantically. I could hear Rachel's panicked voice, shouting my name, pleading with me to stop. But it was too late. I had already done what I came here to do, and I wasn't going to let the story end quietly. Not like this. The security guards moved quickly, surrounding me. One of them grabbed my arm, trying to pull me away from Sam, but I shook him off. I wasn't done. This wasn't over. My blood was still boiling, and all I could see was Rachel, standing frozen at the altar, her wide eyes filled with disbelief. She was crying now, but I didn't care. She had chosen him, and I had given her a front row seat to the destruction of everything she thought she knew. "Let go of me!" I yelled at the guard. But I knew I had already made my mark. The damage had been done. They dragged me out of the church with more force, their hands gripping my arms, pushing me away from the scene. As I was pulled out into the cold, crisp air, I took one last look at the church doors, hearing the muffled voices inside, the minister trying to regain order, guests gossiping about what had just transpired, Rachel's sobs echoing in my mind. The fantasy wedding she had dreamed of was no more. The perfect day she had envisioned was gone, shattered by my hand. I wanted to laugh, but all I could feel was emptiness. Anger had fueled me through that moment, but now that it was over, there was nothing left. I stood in the courtyard outside, the church, my fists clenched, my breath coming out in ragged gasps. There was no satisfaction in seeing Rachel broken, no triumph in watching her world crumble. I had done what I needed to do, but it felt hollow. I didn't wait around. I didn't need to see what happened next. I didn't want to watch her explain to the guests or hear Sam's voice as he tried to patch up the mess I had made. I didn't want to hear their lies, their feeble attempts to salvage what had been ruined. The reality was clear. Rachel's dream wedding was never going to happen. She had destroyed that herself. As I walked away, I couldn't help but think about the things I had lost. My marriage, my trust, the future we had planned together. But in a strange way, those things had already been lost the moment she decided to betray me. The wedding was just the final act of a tragedy that had been unfolding for months. I had come here to make her feel the weight of her actions, but as I walked away from the church, I realized it wasn't just her I had hurt. It was me too. I wasn't the man I once was. I wasn't the person who loved without question, without doubt. The rage had consumed me, and in that fiery moment, I had destroyed everything. Was it worth it? The question lingered in my mind, but I didn't have an answer. It didn't matter. Rachel had chosen Sam, and I had made sure she would never forget the consequences. But in the silence that followed, I felt the quiet sting of regret creeping in. It was a reminder that vengeance, no matter how sweet in the moment, always leaves something behind. Something that can't be fixed, no matter how hard you try. I hadn't just ruined Rachel's wedding. I had ruined the last piece of myself that was still holding on to the past. There was no going back. The man I had been, before that day, before the betrayal, was gone, and I couldn't say for sure if that was a loss or a liberation, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. As I disappeared into the night, I couldn't help but wonder if Rachel and Sam would ever understand the full weight of the choices they had made. Would they ever feel the pain I had felt? Or would they just carry on with their lives, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces of a love that had once felt unbreakable? I wasn't sure. But for now, I didn't care. The wreckage was all that was left, and I had done my part in ensuring they could never forget the day they took everything from me.